Hey guys, I want to try to read a bunch of today because look, we have this much left. I don't know if we're going to do it in the next 2 days, but we can try. All right, here we go. BFG, the great plan. We've absolutely got to stop them, Sophie cried. Put me back in your pocket quick and we'll chase after them and warn everyone in England they're coming. Redunculous and impossible, the big BFG said. This is going 2 times as fast as me, and they is finishing their guzzle before we is halfway. But we can't just sit here doing nothing, Sophia cried. How many girls and boys are they going to eat tonight? Many, the BFG said. The flesh-lumping giant alone is most squawkling wopsy appetite. Will he snatch them out of their beds while they're sleeping? Like peas out of poodle, the BFG said. I can't bear to think it, Sophie cried. Then don't, the BFG said. For years and years, I is sitting here on this very rock. Every night after night when they is galloping away, and I is feeling so sad for all the human beings they is going to gobble up. But I has had to get used to it. There is nothing I can do. If I wasn't a titchy little runty giant only 24 feet high, then I would be stopping them. But that is absolutely out of the window. Do you always know where they're going? Sophie asked. Always, said the BFG. Every night they is yelling at me as they go bolting past. The other day they was yelling, we off to Mississippi and Miss Sorry to guzzle them both. Disgusting, Sophie said. I hate them. She and the big friendly giant sat quietly side by side on the blue rock in the gathering dusk. Sophie had never felt so helpless in her life. After a while, she stood up and cried out, I can't stand it. Just think of all those poor boys and girls who are going to be eaten alive in a few hours' time. We can't just sit here and do nothing. We've got to go after those brutes. No, the BFG said. We must, Sophie cried. Why won't you go? The BFG sighed and shook his head firmly. I has told you 5 or 6 times, he said. And the third will be the last. I is never showing myself to human beings. Why ever not? If I do, they will be putting me in a zoo with all the jiggly raffles and the catty piddlers. Nonsense, Sophie said. And they will be sending you straight back to the orphanage, the GBFG went on. Grown-up human beings is not famous for their kindness. They is quiddle rotters and grink sludgers. That simply isn't true, Sophie cried angrily. Some of them are very kind indeed. Who? The BFG said. Name one. The Queen of England, Sophie said. You can't call her a squiffle rotter or a grink sludger. Well, the BFG said. You can't call her a squeak pit or a not mucher either, Sophie said, getting angrier and angrier. The flesh lump eater is longing dearly to guzzle her up, the BFG said, smiling a little now. Who, the Queen? Sophie cried aghast. Yes, the BFG answered. The flesh lump eater says he is never eating a queen, and he thinks perhaps she has an especially scrumdiddlyumptious flavor. How dare he? Sophie cried. But Flesh Lump Eber says there is too many soldiers around her palace, and he dursn't try it. He'd better not, Sophie said. He is also saying he would like very much to guzzle one of the soldiers in the pretty red suits, but he is worried about those big black furry hats they is wearing. He thinks they might be sticking to his throat. I hope he chokes, Sophie said. Flesh Lump Eber is a very careful giant, the BFG said. Sophie was silent for a few moments. Then suddenly, in a voice filled with excitement, she cried out, I've got it! By golly, I think I've got it! Got what? Asked the BFG. The answer, cried Sophie. We'll go to the Queen. It's a terrific idea. If I went and told the Queen about these disgusting man-eating giants, I'm sure she'll do something about it. The BFG looked down at her sadly and shook his head. She is never believing you, he said, never in a month of Mondays. I think she would. Never, the BFG said. It is sounding such a wonky tall story. If the Queen will be laughing and saying, what awful rub squash. She would not. Of course she would, the BFG said. I has told you before the human beings is simply not believing in giants. Then it is up to us to find a way of making her believe in them, Sophie said. And how is you getting to see the Queen anyway, the BFG asked. Now hold on a sec, Sophie said. Just hold on a sec, because I've got another idea. Your ideas are full of quadswoggle, the BFG said. Not this one, Sophie said. You say if we tell the Queen, she would never believe us. I is certain she wouldn't, the BFG said. But we aren't going to tell her, Sophie asked excitedly. We don't have to tell her. We'll make her dream it. That is an even more fluff-smuggling suggestion, he said, the BFG. Dreams is a lot of fun, but nobody is believing in dreams either. You is only believing in a dream while you is actually dreaming it. But as soon as you is waking up, you is saying, oh, thank goodness, it was only a dream. Don't you worry about that part of it, Sophie said. I can fix that. Never can you fix it, the BFG said. I can, I swear I can. But first of all, let me ask you a very important question. Here it is. Can you make a person dream absolutely anything in the world? Anything you like, the BFG said proudly. If I said I wanted to dream that I was flying in a bathtub with silver wings, could you make me dream it? I could, the BFG said. But how, Sophie said. You obviously don't have exactly that dream in your collection. I do not, the BFG said, but I could soon be mixing it up. How could you mix it up? It's a little bit of like mixing a cake, said the BFG. If you is putting the right amount of all the different things into it, you is making the cake come out any way you want. Sugary, spongy, currently Christmassy, or grob squishy. It is the same with dreams. Go on, said Sophie. I has dillions of dreams on my shelves right now, right, said Sophie. I have dreams about bathtubs, lots of them. I have dreams about silver wings. I have dreams about flying. So what I have to do is mix those dreams together in the proper way, and I is very quickly making a dream where you is flying in a bathtub with silver wings. I see what you mean, said Sophie, but I didn't know you could mix one dream with another. Dreams like being mixed, the BFG answered. They is getting very lonesome all by themselves in those glassy bottles. Right, Sophie said. Now then, do you have a dream about the Queen of England? Lots of them, the BFG said. And about giants? Of course, the BFG said. And about giants eating people? Squiggles of them, the BFG said. And about little girls like me? Those is the commonest of all, the BFG said. I has bottles and bottles of dreams about little girls. And you could mix them all up, just as I want you to. Of course, the BFG said. But how is this helping us? I think you is barking up the wrong dog. Now, hold on, Sophie said. Listen carefully. I want you to mix a dream, which you will blow into the Queen of England's bedroom when she is asleep. And this is how it will go. Now hang on a mimic, the BFG said. How is I possibly getting near enough to the Queen of England's bedroom to blow in my dream? You is talking dumb silly. I'll tell you that later, Sophie said. For the moment, please listen carefully. Here is a dream I want you to mix. Are you paying attention? Very close, the BFG said. I want the Queen of England to dream that the 9 discussing giants, each one about 50 feet tall, are galloping to the England in the night. She must dream their names as well. What are their names again? Flesh Lump Eater, the BFG said. Man Hugger, Bone Cruncher, Child Chewer, Meat Dripper, Gizzard Gubbler, Maid Masher, Blood Blotter, and the Butcher Boy. Let her dream all those names, Sophie said, and let her dream that they will be creeping into England in the depths of the witching hour and snatching little boys and girls from their bed. Let her dream that they will be reaching into the bedroom windows and pulling little boys and girls out of their beds, and then, Sophie paused, do they eat them on the spot or do they carry them away first? They just usually is popping them straight into their mouths like popcorn, the BFG said. Put that in the dream, Sophie said, and then the dream must say that when their tummies are full, they will go galloping back to giant country where no one can find them. Is that all, the BFG said. Certainly not, said Sophie. You must then explain to the Queen in her dream that there is a big friendly giant who can tell her where all those beasts are living, so that she can send her soldiers and her armies to capture them once and for all. And now let her dream that one last and very important thing. Let her dream there is a little girl called Sophie sitting on her windowsill who will tell her where the big friendly giant is hiding. Where is he hiding? Asked the BFG. We'll come to that later, Sophie said. So the Queen dreams her dream, right? Right, the BFG said. Then she wakes up and the first thing she thinks is, oh, what a horrid dream. I'm so glad it was only a dream. And then she looks up from her pillow, and what does she see? What does she see? The BFG said. She sees a little girl called Sophie sitting on her windowsill, right there in real life before her very eyes. How is you going to be sitting on the Queen's windowsill, may I beg you? The BFG said. You are going to put me there, Sophie said, and that's the lovely part about it. If someone dreams that there is a little girl sitting on her windowsill, and then she wakes up and sees that the little girl really is sitting on her there, that is a dream come true, is it not? I is beginning to see where you was driving to, the BFG said. If this queen is knowing that part of her dream is true, then perhaps she is believing the rest of the dream is true as well. That's about it, said Sophie, but I shall have to convince her of that myself. You said you was wanting the dream to say there would be a big friendly giant who is going to talk to the queen? Absolutely, said Sophie. You must. You are the only one who can tell her where to find the other giants. How is I meeting the queen? Asked the BFG. I is not wanting to be shooted at by her soldiers. The soldiers are only in the front of the palace, Sophie said. At the back there is a huge garden. There are no soldiers in there at all. There is a very high wall with spikes on it around the garden to stop people from climbing it. But you could simply walk over that. How is you knowing all about the Queen's Palace? The BFG said. Last year I was in a different orphanage, Sophie said. I was in London, and we used to go for walks around there. Is you helping me to find the palace? The BFG asked. I has never dared to go hide and seeking around London in my life. I'll show you a way, Sophie said confidently. I is frightened of London, the BFG said. Don't be, Sophie said. It's full of tiny dark streets, and there are very few people about in the witching hour. The BFG picked Sophie up between one finger and the thumb and placed her gently in the palm of the other. Is this Queen Palace very big? She asked. There he is. Huge, Sophie said. Then how's we finding the right bedroom? That's up to you, Sophie said. You are supposed to be an expert on that sort of thing. And you is absolutely sure the Queen will not put me in a zoo with the caterpillars. Piddlers. Of course she won't, Sophie said. You will be a hero, and you will never have to eat snozzcumbers again. Sophie said that the BFG's eyes widened. He licked his lips. You mean it? He said. You really mean it? No more disgusting snozzcumbers? You couldn't get one if you wanted to, Sophie said. Humans don't grow them. That did it. The BFG got to his feet. When is you wanting me to mix this special dream? He asked. Now, said Sophie at once. When is he going to see the Queen? He said. Tonight, said Sophie, as soon as you've mixed a dream. Tonight? The BFG cried. Why such a flash-bunkling furry? If we can't save tonight's children, we can anyway save tomorrow's, Sophie said. What is more, I am getting famished. I haven't had anything to eat for 24 hours. Then we had better get crackling, the BFG said, moving back towards the cave. Sophie kissed him on the tip of his thumb. I knew you'd do it, she said. Come on, let's hurry. All right, the next chapter, Mixing the Dream. It was dark now, and the night had already begun. The BFG, with Sophie sitting on his hand, hurried into the cave and put into those brilliant, blinding lights that seemed to come from nowhere. He placed Sophie on the table. Stay there, please, he said, and no chittering. I is needing to listen only to the silence when I is mixing up such a naughty, plexicated dream as this. He hurried away from her. He got out an enormous empty glass jar, and that was the size of a washing machine. He clutched it into his chest and hurried towards the shelves, on which stood thousands and thousands of smaller jars containing the captured dreams. Dreams about giants, he muttered to himself as he searched the labels. The giants is guzzling human beings. Oh, no, not that one, nor that one. There's one. And here's another. He grabbed the jar and unscrewed the tops. He tipped the dream into an enormous jar, and he clutched in it, and each one went in. Sophie caught a glimpse of the small green blob tumbling from one jar into another. The BFG hurried toward another shelf. Now, he muttered, I was wanting dreams about giggle houses for girls and about boggle boxes for boys. He was becoming very tense now. Sophie could almost see the excitement bubbling inside him as he scurried back and forth. Among his beloved jars, there must have been 50,000 dreams together up there on the shelves, but he seemed to know almost exactly where every one of them was. Dreams about a little girl, he muttered, and dreams about me, about the BFG. Come on, hurry up, get on with it. Now, where in the wonky world is I keeping those? And so I went on. In about half an hour, the BFG had found all the dreams he wanted, and he had tipped them into one of the jar. He put the jar on the table, and Sophie sat watching him as he said nothing. Inside the big jar, laying on the bottom of it, he could clearly see about 50 of those oval sea green jelly shapes, all pulsing gently in and out, some lying on top of the others, but each one still a quite separated individual dream. Now is the mixing them, the BFG announced. He went to the cupboard where he kept his bottles of frog scuttle, and from it he took out a gigantic egg beater. It was one of those with a handle in which you turn, and down below there were lots of overlapping blades to go whizzing around. He inserted the bottom of this contraption into the big jar where the dreams were lying. Watch, he said, and he started turning the handle very fast. Flashes of green and blue exploded inside the jar. The dreams were being whisked into his sea green froth. The poor things, Sophie cried. They's not feeling it, the BFG said as he turned the handle. Dreams is not like human beings or animals. They has no brains. They is made of zuzumis. After about a minute, the BFG stopped whisking. The whole bottle was now full to the brim with large bubbles. They were almost exactly the bubbles we ourselves blow from soapy water, except that these had even brighter and more beautiful colors swimming on their surfaces. Keep watching, the BFG said. Quite slowly, the topmost bubble rose up through the neck of the jar and floated away. A second one floated, and then the third and the fourth. Soon the cave was filled with hundreds of beautiful colored bubbles, all drifting gently through the air. It was truly a wonderful sight. As Sophie watched them, they were all started floating towards the cave entrance, which was still open. Oh, they're going out, Sophie whispered. Of course, the BFG said. Where to? Those are all little tiny dream bits that I isn't using, the BFG said. They is going back to the misty country to join up with proper dreams. It's all a bit beyond me, Sophie said. Dreams are full of mystery and magic, the BFG said. Do not try to understand them. Look in the big bottle, and you will now see the dream you is wanting for the queen. Sophie turned and started at the jar. On the bottom of the jar, something was thrashing around wildly, bouncing up and down and flinging itself against the jar wall. Good heavens, she cried. Is that it? That's it, the BFG said proudly. But it's horrible, Sophie cried. It's jumping around. It wants to get out. That's because it's a trogglehumper, the BFG said. It's a nightmare. Oh, but I don't want to give the queen a nightmare, Sophie said. If she is dreaming about giants guzzling up little boys and girls, then what you was expecting to be except a nightmare? The BFG said. Oh, no, Sophie cried. Oh, yes, the BFG said. A dream where you is seeing little children being eaten is about the most frightsome trog-humpling dream you can get. It's a Kixie bog thumper. It's a wopsy gobswitcher. It's all of them riddled into one. It's as bad as a dream as I blew into the flesh thumpers eaters this afternoon. It is worse. Sophie stared down at the fearsome nightmare dream that it was still thrashing away in the huge glass jar. It was much larger than the others. It was about the size of the shape of, shall we say, a turkey egg. It was jellyish. It had tinges of bright scarlet deep inside. There's that scary dream. Something terrible about the way it was throwing itself against the sides of the jar. I don't want to give it to the queen a nightmare, Sophie said. I is thinking, the BFG said, that your queen will be happy to have a nightmare if having a nightmare is going to save a lot of human beings from being gobbled up by a filthsome giant. Is I right or is I left? I suppose you're right, Sophie said. It's got to be done. She will soon be getting over it, the BFG said. Have you put all the other important things into it, Sophie asked. When I was blowing that dream into the queen's bedroom, the BFG said, she will dreaming every single little thanksgiving thing you asking me to make her dream about me sitting on the windowsill. That part is very strong. About the big friendly giant, I is putting a nice long gobbet about him, the BFG said. As he spoke, picked up one of his smaller jars and very quickly tipped the struggling, thrashing trogglethumper out of the larger jar into the smaller one. Then he screwed the lid tightly onto the small jar. That's it, he announced. We is now ready. He fetched his suitcase and put in a small jar into it. Why bother to take a great big suitcase when you've only got one jar? Sophie said. You can put the jar in your pocket. The BFG looked down at her and smiled. By goggles, he said, thinking the jar of his suitcase. Your head is not quite full of grim sludge after all. I can see you as not born last week. Thank you, kind sir, Sophie said, making a little curtsy from the tabletop. Is you ready to leave? The BFG asked. I'm ready, Sophie cried. Her heart is beginning to thump in the thought of what they were about to do. It really was a wild and crazy thing. Perhaps they would both be thrown into prison. The BFG was putting on his great black cloak. He tucked the jar into the pocket of his cloak. He picked up the long trumpet-like dream blower. Then he turned and looked at Sophie, who was still on the tabletop. The dream bottle is in my pocket, he said. You is going to sit in there with it during the travel? Never, Sophie cried. I refuse to sit next to that beastly thing. Then where is you going to sit? The BFG asked her. Sophie looked over him for a few moments, and she said, if you would be kind enough to swivel one of your lovely big ears so that it is lying flat like a dish, that would make a very cozy spot for me to sit. By gumbo, that is a squackling good idea, the BFG said. Slowly, he swiveled his huge ear to the right until it was like a giant shelf facing the heavens. He lifted Sophie up and placed her into it. The ear itself, which was about the size of a large tea tray, was full of the same channels and crinkles as a human ear. It was extremely comfortable. I hope I don't fall down your ear hole, Sophie said, wedging away from the large hole just beside her. Be very careful not to do that, the BFG said. You would be giving me a crunking earache. The nice thing about being there was that she could whisper directly into his ear. You was tickling me a bit, the BFG said. Please do not jiggle about. I'll try not to, Sophie said. Are we ready? Ooh, the BFG said. Don't do that. I didn't do anything. Sophie said, you are talking too loud. You was forgetting that I is hearing every little thing's a-ling-a-ling 50 times louder than usual. There is a shouting. You is shouting away right inside my ear. Oh gosh, Sophie murmured. I forgot that. Your voice is sounding like thunder and trumpets. I'm so sorry, Sophie whispered. Is that better? No, cried the BFG. It sounds as though you're shooting off blunderbuss. Then how can I talk to you? Sophie whispered. Don't, cried the poor BFG. Please don't. Each word is like you dropping buzz bombs in my ear hole. Sophie tried speaking right under her breath. Is this better? She said. She spoke so softly she couldn't even hear her own voice. That's better, the BFG said. Now I am hearing you very nicely. What is you trying to say to me just now? I was saying we are ready. We is off, cried the BFG, heading for the cave entrance. We is off to meet Her Magister, the Queen. Just outside the cave, he rolled the large stone back into the place and set off on a tremendous gallop. All right, guys, we will read again tomorrow and hopefully finish the rest of our book. If not, I'll put another posting next week. All right, bye, guys. Have a good day.